Do you know what? Do you know what? Do you know what? Do you actually know what? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? I've literally learned after spending enough time around family breakdown, coercive relationships, people trying to crawl their way back to sanity. Abuse is incredibly adaptable. It doesn't mind changing outfits. It doesn't mind changing settings. It's very happy actually to swap a kitchen table for a boardroom, a marriage for a professional network, and bruises for plausible deniability. So same behavior, better branding, and we're taught to look for abuse in obvious places, raised voices, explosions, big villains, clear victims. But the really effective stuff, that's quiet, subtle, it's concerned. It sounds like I'm just asking questions. It looks like I'm worried about standards. It feels like people deserve to know. And somehow, magically, it always travels sideways. Never directly, never straight on, never with names attached, never with evidence that could survive daylight. Funny that. Because if you've ever worked with victims of relational abuse, you already know this pattern inside out. Triangulation, smear by proxy, recruiting others to carry messages you're too professional to say out loud, undermining someone's reputation while insisting you're the reasonable one. It's textbook. What changes isn't the behavior, it's the language. In relationships, we call it control. In professional spaces, we call it concern. In families, we call it manipulation. At work, we call it sharing experiences. In abusive dynamics, we call it coercion. In industries, we call it accountability. Same animal, different costume. And here's where it gets truly fascinating. Some of the loudest voices claiming to protect people from abuse are perfectly comfortable replicating abusive dynamics themselves, as long as they can tell themselves it's for the greater good. They'll warn you about narcissists while building whisper networks. They'll talk about safeguarding while pressuring others to repeat stories they never witnessed. They'll cry transparency while avoiding anything that requires their own name, their own evidence, or their own spine. Apparently, abuse stops being abuse once it's done for a reason. That's adorable. Let's be clear. If you avoid direct conversation but spread narratives indirectly, if you rely on implication instead of facts, if you need crowds, incentives, or secrecy to make your point land, you're not holding anyone accountable. You're rehearsing the same behavior you claim to oppose. And no amount of professional vocabulary changes that. Abuse doesn't stop being abuse because it's happening in WhatsApp groups instead of bedrooms. It doesn't stop being abuse because it's wearing concern instead of rage. It doesn't stop being abuse because everyone involved is technically an adult with a LinkedIn profile. Power misused is power misused. What really gives the game away is this. People who genuinely care about truth love process. They love documentation. They love first-hand accounts. They love putting things in writing where scrutiny can reach them. People who care about control prefer noise. Noise is safe. Noise is deniable. Noise lets you wound without standing still long enough to be seen doing it. And the moment someone says, okay, facts, timelines, evidence, the noise makers suddenly become very busy, very vague, or very offended, which is always a tell. I mean, I work with people who've spent years being told that they're difficult for wanting clarity, aggressive for wanting directness, and unreasonable for wanting things said out loud. So when I see the same tactics recycled in professional settings, I don't get confused. I don't get emotional. I recognize the pattern. And here's the same part some people won't like. If you're engaging in these behaviors while telling yourself you're one of the good ones, you're not an exception. You're an example. Abuse doesn't care what story you tell about yourself. It only cares whether it gets results. So my position is very clear and very simple and very boring. I don't comment on things I didn't witness. I don't repeat stories I can't evidence. And I don't trade credibility for belonging incentives or applause. And I don't confuse gossip with safeguarding. If something matters, it can go through proper channels. If it can survive process, it was never about protection. It was about power. And power hates being named. So no, I'm not reacting. I'm not defending. I'm not attacking. I'm doing something far more inconvenient. I'm refusing to participate. Because the funny thing about noise is this: it needs constant energy to survive, and discipline. Discipline just waits. The people who recognize themselves in what I've said won't need clarification. They'll just feel it. Everyone else can relax. If this doesn't apply to you, then it wasn't about you. And if it does, well, abuse doesn't disappear just because you call it something nicer.